Hello, beautiful Love Goddess. Welcome to a recording of a Love Goddess podcast with your host, Katya Melvin. And today, I want to share with you my story of how I met my husband. I know I promised to share that story after I shared the story of my unsuccessful love and the cheating that I have experienced with someone I thought was my perfect partner for life, and it turned out to not be that way. So today specifically, I am talking on how did my relationship start with my husband and how it has evolved and why it started, right? I want to bring you back to my story that I met, let's call him Jacob. I don't know. This is the first name that came to my head with the Jacob, right? I don't want to actually give him his real name because some people may recognize who that is. But I met my unsuccessful story with Jacob happened when I came to United States when I was 19 in 2000. Well, actually, I'm not gonna share that because then you know my age, right? I'm gonna say when I was 19, and I thought he was the one. He finally treated me better out of all the relationships that I had. I thought it was amazing. I thought sex was amazing. I had to go back to Russia because I had student visa for the 4-month period only, and I needed to go back to Russia to study and complete my studies at the university. But my plan was to get another visa and come back to United States and stay in the United States. So that was my plan. So that he knew about my plan, right? To cut this story short, I already shared that in the previous episode that I recorded. He ended up ghosting me after a month after I went back to Russia. I didn't know what the hell was going on. That was like so torturous, at least if you have closure or know what's going on, but he just disappeared. I called his mom, I called his work. I was that crazy girlfriend, and nobody could tell me what the hell is going on. So the next year I got my visa, came back to the same town. The girl told me where he lives. She also told me he got married to another Russian girl. I was like, what the fuck? So went to knock on his apartment. Was the most pathetic, worst conversation ever. All of those details I share in my previous podcast on non-resistance, why you need to release resistance, right? Well, with that being said, I had that conversation, was so mad that he cheated, so mad that he got married, so mad that he ghosted. I decided to be mad at the entire manhood. I decided to not, be a player. Because guys were like playing me. I said, fuck everyone, I'm going to be a player myself. Who is my next victim? That's when my whole femme fatale philosophy started. The only problem with, 3 days later, met my husband, who was way too sweet to be played with. And on top of it, and that's another story I shared in my podcast on non-resistance. So go listen to those stories, right? Is that he was way too sweet for me to even play with. I just didn't want to hurt him. He was way too nice. And I put an ultimatum forward and said, hey, we either going for a long-term relationship or we breaking up, which one you pick? And he picked long-term relationship, completely to my utter surprise that I did not expect. So let's rewind that story a little bit. Let's rewind to how we met. Again, as soon as I made this decision, and by the way, like that whole the reason why we are like I'm going with the whole femme fatale aesthetic is because I was hurt. And by the way, like all these years, I was in a long-term marriage and I did not get to play out the revenge woman that I was. I've been asking myself, like, what's up with the whole femme fatale, and what's up with the whole dom thing, right? Like, why am I so attracted to that? Why I like to have that power, and that is exactly why, because and I had to dive into that philosophy, and I had to ask myself those questions, and I've realized the reason why we are here now is because, like 17 years ago, I was really hurt and I made a decision that I was in my subconscious since then to be a player and give guys back to like for all the times and years that they've played me, right? And so like I wanted that power. This was my anger manifesting, right? And because I went into my long-term relationship very quickly, like 3 days later, I did never got to play her out. It's divine intervention. I never got to play her out. So she's coming through right now. Like I still had that, like unsubconsciously, I still had her within myself that I never got to play her out until now, when I became successful, right? When I became successful, she's coming through right now. But anyway, back to that story, right? So, we had this awkward conversation with Jacob, and 3 days later, getting ready to go to another town. We girls, like my friend and I, don't have a car. So a friend of a friend asked us to give us a ride, and the city is about an hour away, to someone we knew from the previous year, and we were excited to meet, and they lived in this student housing place. And you know, student housing, like parties, parties all the time. We are like young, we love parties. So anyway, he asked someone to pick us up. My husband was that person. I also drank some really bad wine that day. That's why I don't ever drink wine from the box ever anymore, because of that experience that I had like 20 years ago, where like I just didn't feel good. Like I was so nauseous from that wine that I drank. And when I don't feel good, I'm a pissed off MF. You don't want to be around me when I don't feel good. So anyway, I was that person in a car driving to a party, and my friend who was with me are the chatty one, and she sits next to him, and she sits in the middle. So I don't know but like I remember that whole drive I was silent, I was pissed, I was like didn't feel good. But then at the party itself, I guess I loosened up, or maybe I felt a little better or something, and I noticed him, right? Like I literally locked eyes with him. And I used my seduction techniques that I already knew back then at 19, because I studied them intentionally to get him to be my victim, right? Because I made a decision to be the player. And it fucking worked. Surprise! Techniques worked, right? And while we did not necessarily like sleep or had sex together, we ended up like completely random people. Like imagine this situation. First day, completely random people sleeping together in the same bed and not having sex. Like not even kissing. Just sleeping together in the same bed. Huh? So anyway, all of that is because I used my approach, my technique that I know that I teach women. to get him all wrapped up in my magic or whatever, right? And so the next morning, we were like, wow, that was something. That was very interesting. Never experienced that before. Exchanged phone numbers, all of that. Had a hard time saying goodbye. I don't even remember if we parted ways or we stayed a while or what happened. But I remember about 2 or 3 days later, we may have met one more time. He comes back to my apartment and stays over. And that's when we have our sex for the first time. That's 3 days later. And it was like the most mind-blowing sex of my life, even better than the first guy, right? And I was like, oh my God, who's this person? So anyway, we kind of started, I wouldn't say dating, but seeing each other, right? And about a week or maybe 2 weeks into it, I say a week into it, we were back at that house at a party where, like, at that point, I was getting too attached. He was way too sweet and way too good, and I just didn't want to get myself hurt again. I just could not handle another heartbreak. And I protected myself, and I said, listen, this is the decision I made. This is like, I've been hurt too many times. I do not want to get hurt again. I've decided to be a player. So this is the deal. If you want long-term relationship, you and I will stick together and we'll proceed with a long-term relationship. If you don't want a long-term relationship and you want to be another player, we're going to break up right here, right now. And not even kidding you, I expected him to say, I want to, I don't want to have long-term relationship because, I don't have trust in guys. At that point, I believe all guys are players, right? And he said that he wanted long-term relationship. I was shocked. This was outside of the reality of the possibility of him saying that. He said, what? And I was so ready to just walk away. And it was so scary too, because I kind of started liking the guy. And he said that he wanted a long-term relationship. And I was like, fuck, what do we do now? I was getting excited about my player personality, and now I can't play. So that got shoved down until recently, right? So anyway, and then it went very quickly. A week after that, I moved in with him. Not even kidding you, because I did not have a stable living situation. I kind of didn't want to be in Corolla anymore. So I moved in in his, he was renting a room at a time because he was also kind of there for the summer. So anyway, and we started living together. And the rest is history. But do you know what else is funny? I keep saying I married him, which is true. If I didn't need a green card, I would probably would have married at all, because I did not want that. I didn't want the children or the family. I was party. I love party. I still love party. And, I am free. To me, I'm a wild, free woman. And that's my perception. Have always been and have always will be. I'm very independent, free, and wild. And thank goodness he understands that nature, because marriage would be suffocating for me. He gives me a lot of space. With that said, I keep saying the story, hey, I got him to marry me simply because I needed a green card, which is true. Yes, in a relationship, we said we love each other, probably 3-4 months into relationship. For about another 7 months, we've just been living together. And then I said, you're gonna marry me. And he's like, nah, 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 nah. And one day I literally just said, I have witnesses. We're going on Saturday. And that's what we did. And that would be another story for another podcast episode, because we also did not tell his parents. Okay? That would be another story for another podcast episode. I'm going to leave you wondering and share that next week. So, with that, my love, I also thank you so much for listening to my exciting story of my life, right? But I invite you to join the Love Goddess Club so you can listen to all these stories that I had of my crazy life. Like, I had a crazy life because, like, who at 19 just travels across the ocean away from parents, because I wanted to get away from my parents so I could have freedom, and I'm a freedom seeker, and that's why I started business, because I'm a freedom seeker, right? And I didn't know any language. So anyway, this and many more stories are coming. And I invite you to join the Love Goddess Studio, a sisterhood of women coming together and empowering each other. Go to lovegodesss.com to learn more, and I will see you next time.